What's going on, guys? Showtime here, back with another video. In today's video, we will be looking at the 2011 Philadelphia Eagles, a team that was predicted to go to the Super Bowl by almost everyone, but failed to live up to expectations. I will be explaining why this team didn't perform at a high level, but before we get into 2011, we must look back at their 2010 season to gain some perspective. The 2010 Eagles weren't supposed to be a good team. They had just lost Donovan McNabb, their star quarterback who had been with the team since 1999 and had led the team to a Super Bowl appearance in 2003. They also lost their star running back Brian Westbrook, who had been to the Pro Bowl 2 times in his career. There was an ongoing quarterback battle with Michael Vick, who had just gotten out of prison for his involvement in a dogfighting scandal, and Kevin Kolb, the team's second-round pick from a year ago. Kolb ultimately won the starting job from Vick and was slated to start against the Green Bay Packers in Week 1. But something happened in this game that would change everything.
It's 3rd down and 14. And Cobb's in trouble. Matthews knocks it out. The ball would have been out of bounds. It hit an official, stayed in play. They're ruling it out.
Kolb rolled out of the pocket. He saw that nobody was open, so he took off. He didn't realize that all-pro linebacker Clay Matthews was right behind him. When he went past the line of scrimmage, he was whacked from behind and was not able to protect himself when he went to the ground. He ultimately hurt his jaw and was forced out of the game. Enter Michael Vick, a man who had not played professional football in 3 years. It was up to him to see if he could turn back the clock to his Atlanta days. Vick had a chance to keep his job. He parlayed this chance and had the best season of his entire career. He threw for 3,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and had a passer rating of 100. The Eagles would finish with a 10-6 record and managed to finish 3rd in the league in rushing yards, despite losing their running back, Brian Westbrook. Unfortunately, they would come up short against the Packers in the wildcard round, but there was hope that next year would be the year they finally went over the hump. With an established quarterback, 2 of the fastest wide receivers in the NFL with Jeremy Maclin and Deshaun Jackson, and one of the best offensive line groups in the NFL, they had one of the best offenses in the league. The only thing they needed was some elite defensive players, and then they would be a guaranteed Super Bowl contender for the next year. Enter the 2011 offseason. It would start off with a bang. On July 28, 2011, the Eagles traded backup quarterback Kevin Kolb to the Arizona Cardinals for all-pro cornerback Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. The same exact day, the Philadelphia Eagles also signed all-pro cornerback Nam Samoa, who's regarded as the second best cornerback in the NFL, behind only Darrelle Revis. Combining those two with Pro Bowler Asante Samuel, the Eagles had just built a no-fly zone that wouldn't allow any big plays down the field. The Eagles' work had just begun, however. On July 30th, the Eagles signed Pro Bowl defensive end Jason Babin, who just came off a 12.5 sack season with the Tennessee Titans. On the same day, they also signed Pro Bowl defensive tackle Cullen Jenkins. With guys like all-pro defensive tackle Trent Cole and star linebacker Mike Patterson already on the roster, people viewed the Eagles' defense as the best in the entire NFL. Now for the offensive additions. On July 28th, the Eagles signed enigmatic quarterback Vince Young, a former Rookie of the Year, to be the backup quarterback to Michael Vick. On July 31st, the Eagles signed left guard Evan Mathis. He was viewed as a solid offensive lineman and also was viewed as a solid starter. On August 2nd, the Eagles signed Ronnie Brown. He would be a complimentary back to all-pro running back LaShawn McCoy, but was good in his own right, as he had rushed for over 700 yards the year before with the Miami Dolphins. With this offseason, it finally felt like the Philadelphia Eagles' Super Bowl aspirations would come to reality. Then came one of the most famous statements made by a player in NFL history.
All right, what about the pieces that this team has added in just the past few days?
Dream team. From Nande to Cromartie, from Jason to myself, I know they're going to do some more things,
Vince Young's confidence was not in solidarity, as most analysts in the NFL predicted the Eagles would be unstoppable. But then came the season. The first game of the season went the way everyone imagined it would. The Eagles beat the St. Louis Rams 31-13 in a blowout. The offense was very effective both through the air and on the ground, while the defense was completely shutting down the Rams' offense led by star running back Steven Jackson. Unfortunately for the Eagles, this victory against the Rams would be their only victory they would get in the month of September. They would go on to lose a tight game to the Falcons 31-35. They would then be blown out by the New York Giants in their next game, 16-29. Then, they managed to blow a 20-3 lead to the San Francisco 49ers, despite Michael Vick throwing for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. But their most embarrassing loss this season would come to the Buffalo Bills, a team led by journeyman quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick. The same Buffalo Bills that had not made the playoffs since 2003. Their elite defense allowed Fred Jackson to gain 111 yards on the ground and 85 yards through the air. At this point, the Eagles were 1-4 and looked nothing like the dream team that Vince Young claimed they would be. They finally did pick up another win against the Washington Redskins, but it was an unimpressive win as the Redskins went on to finish their season with a 5-11 record and were viewed as one of the worst teams in the NFL. They also beat the Dallas Cowboys in a 34-7 blowout, but they were still only 3-4. Their next 2 games would be a complete crapshoot. They lost to Jay Cutler and the Chicago Bears 24-30 and lost to the Arizona Cardinals 17-21. Vick performed horribly in these 2 games. He didn't throw a touchdown and threw 3 interceptions. The next week, he would be benched for the man who came up with the infamous nickname, Vince Young. Despite throwing 3 interceptions, Vince Young also threw 2 touchdowns and had 258 yards through the air as the Eagles beat the Giants 17-10. It seemed like maybe Young could be the man that could revive the season. After all, they did the same thing with Kevin Cobb and Michael Vick last year. Despite throwing for 400 yards and 1 touchdown against the Patriots the next week, the Eagles still lost by 18 points. Their elite defense, with 3 of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, allowed Brady to kill them through the air. He threw for 361 yards and 3 touchdowns, without throwing an interception. The next game, Vince Young had his worst game of his career. He threw 4 interceptions against the Seattle Seahawks, and the team would lose 14-31. Keep in mind, this is the same Seattle Seahawks team that had a quarterback named Tavares Jackson. This same Seahawks team finished 7-9, and they made it to the playoffs somehow. But that should be held with a huge asterisk, as they were in one of the worst divisions in football at the time. At this point in the season, the Eagles were 4-8 and a long shot to make the playoffs with the way they'd been playing. Michael Vick would be thrust back into the starting role for the last 4 games of the season, and he won all 4 of those starts, but at the same time, it was too little, too late. The Eagles would finish with an 8-8 record and didn't make the playoffs for the first time since 2007. The main reason why this team failed is simply because of system. Guys like Nnamdi Asomugha and Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie were not used to zone coverage. They both excelled at being man coverage cornerbacks. It's extremely difficult to make a shift from one play style to another in 3 months, let alone a year. When it came to Jason Babin and Cullen Jenkins, they were both old guys on the back ends of their respective careers. The issue with the offense is a bit more complex. Sure, Michael Vick did have his best season of his career in 2010, but at the same time, he was 31 years old and had shown signs of slowing down. He was effective in 2010 because defenders weren't sure if he would take off or throw it deep to Deshaun Jackson or Jeremy Maclin. Without his top flight speed, defenders were able to defend deep, and Vick wasn't able to counter it. The most unfortunate part about this entire thing is that they spent so much money only to do worse the very next year. In total, they spent over $150 million on these free agents. By 2015, all of them were released from the Eagles except for Evan Maclin. Just because a team spends a bunch of money on players doesn't mean they're guaranteed to have success. The Eagles had to learn that the hard way. In the next 4 years, they would only make the playoffs once, and Andy Reid was eventually fired. It just shows how much of an impact one offseason can make for your future. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.